The Assyrians were a storm with iron feet. They marched behind winged standards, their kings carved into stone as lion killers and city breakers, and no frontier had held them long. By the 14th year of King Hezekiah, their banners ringed Jerusalem like thunderheads. Farms smoldered, towns along the road sat roofless and silent, and refugees pressed against the capital's walls with the look of people who had run out of map. Sennacherib, king of Assyria, sent his field commander, the Rabshakeh, to speak where all could hear. He stood at the conduit of the upper pool and shouted in Judah's tongue, "Do not let Hezekiah deceive you. Which God ever saved his land from Assyria? Where are Hamath, Arpad, Sepharvaim now?" His speech was a siege engine made of syllables. People on the wall were told to keep silent. Their fingers tightened on spear shafts, while faith and fear wrestled in their throats. Hezekiah did not answer with boasts. He tore his robes and went into the temple. He sent messengers in sackcloth to Isaiah, and he spread the Assyrian letter before the Lord like a wound. His prayer was simple. "O Lord, God of Israel, you alone rule the kingdoms. See the insults and save us, that all may know you." It was not a plea for personal safety so much as a devotion of reputation. If Judah fell, the nations would say the Lord had fallen too. Isaiah's reply cut through the air like a trumpet. "Do not fear the words you have heard. Behold, I will put a spirit in him. He shall hear a rumor and return to his land, and there I will cause him to fall by the sword." The prophet's banner over the city said it plain. No arrow here, no ramp, no step inside the gate. By the way he came, he would go. Outside the walls, the Assyrian machine continued its work. Engineers measured distances, scribes tallied rations, scouts rode out and back like needles in cloth. The camp sprawled over the hills in squares of order, tents, corralled animals, stacks of spare spearheads, kettle smoke rising in thin blue ropes. Veterans told stories of Lachish and of cities on the coast that had opened their gates at a glance. They sharpened blades that had been sharp for years. Night settled. The murmur thinned to snores, the shuffle of sentries, the small clink of armor in sleep. Inside Jerusalem, lamps guttered in doorways. Mothers hushed children. Priests kept watch. The city breathed like a fist closing. Then came a night with no drama written on its face. No comet, no red moon, no wind strong enough to explain anything. The text says only, "The angel of the Lord went out and struck down in the camp of the Assyrians 185,000. The Hebrew is spare. Dawn colored the tents, and men who rose to stoke cook fires found their companions with eyes unfocused and mouths slack, as if sleep had become a deeper thing. Row on row, bodies where breath used to be. Horses blew and would not be quieted. The first shouts became a chorus, the chorus became panic. Imagine the map from above, a city ringed by fear, and around it fear turning inward. Officers called for order and found no battalions to order. Couriers galloped with messages that had no recipients. The Rabshakeh, loud as a trumpet the day before, stood in a quiet his voice could not cross. Some thought plague, others thought poison. More than a few thought what the Judeans would later sing, that the Lord had rebuked an empire in a single breath. What mattered was this: the machine had lost its parts. The survivors burned their packing lists, gathered what honor they could, and pulled up stakes. When word reached Sennacherib, the undefeated king obeyed a new logic: retreat. He went back to Nineveh, to walls broad enough for chariots on their tops and gardens that he had chained to the desert with canals. He boasted of shutting Hezekiah like a bird in a cage, but the column for conquest is blank. Years later, in the house of his god Nisroch, 2 sons rose against him with blades. He fell where he had once mocked another king's trust. Inside Jerusalem, The morning after the unbattle tasted like water after siege bread. People opened the gates slowly, as if sound itself might trigger disaster. Scouting parties stepped into the valley, then more confidently when they saw vultures already at work. A psalm took shape on tongues unused to triumph. Not to us, O Lord, but to your name give glory. Parents told children what they had been spared from learning. Merchants came out with scales and careful eyes. Isaiah walked the wall and breathed as if he had been holding his lungs for a week. The story traveled. Traders carried it along caravan routes. Diplomats carried it through courts in Samaria, Egypt, and Tyre. Captives whispered it in places where Assyrian whips had cracked. Each retelling bent toward the same astonished verb, struck. Not negotiated, not outmaneuvered, struck. Scholars later offered mechanisms, plague, dust, bad water. But even if true, they only trace what the text names, deliverance by a hand Judah did not control. The theology is not subtle. The Holy One of Israel is not one God among many, quarreling in a sky crowded with rivals. He is the maker of the sky itself. Empires declare themselves inevitable. Then a morning comes when they are not. The balance of power that diplomats sketch with quills can be overturned by breath. Jerusalem learned that night what nations forget in cycles, that strength without righteousness curdles into arrogance, and arrogance summons correction. Yet the narrative also honors the human parts that were not passive. Hezekiah prayed instead of posturing. He sought Isaiah instead of flatterers. Watchmen kept their stations, priests kept their vigil, parents kept their children quiet, soldiers held the walls. Faith did not erase duty, it purified it. Deliverance did not make the city lazy, it made them humble. The memory hardened into liturgy and into policy. Fortify what you can. Seek truth from prophets, not threats, and measure kings by whether they bow before the one throne that cannot be stormed. In the years after, Jerusalem still faced armies and famine and its own sins. The people did not rename the valley. They did not build a theme park on the site. They kept the memory as a stern kindness. When children asked about the psalm of snares broken and birds escaped, parents pointed across the valley. We woke, and the snare was empty. They told them the number, too, 185,000, because numbers like that teach scale to the heart. Stand on the ridge at first light and look toward where the Assyrian camp once sprawled. The land has healed in ordinary ways: thistle, rock rose, a line of olive trees where a supply road might have run. The city behind you has newer stones on older stones, and traffic on the road below makes the sound of distant surf. You could live a life and never guess what happened here. But if you read the old record and hold still, the quiet feels crowded. You can almost hear armor shift, a commander draw breath for a speech he will not give, and the thin, amazed laughter of watchmen who do not dare, at first, to laugh. That is the shape of the tale: a taunt, a prayer, a promise, a night, a silence, a turning. The empire learned that a throne can be high and still not be highest. The city learned that fear can be loud and still not be final. And the world learned, if it cared to, that there are hours when history belongs not to soldiers or scribes, but to the one who wakes the living and numbers the dead. Thank you for listening to Divine Crime. Subscribe for more true stories from the most dangerous book ever written.